Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Secret Orders of Mint Condition. It's been a while since we've taken a trip to our four-colored corner. Sometimes when we head down that street, we get lost at a Yankees game or a Rangers game, God help us. And that can lead to wild highs and lows. But the corner should always be reserved for classic comics that entertain us. So here we are at the Spidey corner and a look back at ASM Volume 1, issues 39 and 40. Face it, Tiger. On this corner, you just hit the jackpot. So, James, you just told me off air you've never read these two before. These two, I'm going to hold them up for our audience right now.
Very
Okay,
nice, yeah.
those are the originals. I did not take them out of the bag to read them. I read them from here.
Much better, much better.
Yes, right. I can only get my scrubby little fingers on them. So I have my notes and I've got my ideas about this story and the time period it fits in. But I am wildly anticipatory of what you're going to say about these two stories. So.
Well, so I will, like, a lot of Joe's Comics corners, and thank God you indulge me, is me like reading books that I've never read. Because I would consider, like, because we've read what now we read The Death of Gwen Stacy previously.
Yes.
We read Hulk 180, 181. Would never read it until we did the Joe's Comics corner on it.
Right. We did the crossover that wasn't a crossover, the Halloween thing between Marvel and DC, right?
Yeah, so I consider these two books I know are your favorite, like our second episode of the podcast and our top 10 stories of all time. This issue 39 and 40 are I forget where they fall, but they're way up there.
They were in the top 5 for sure.
Top 5, and I've never read it. I mean, and part of that is because like I've said, like when we had the comic book store, even before that, like these were not available in reprints to read like easily.
No, they weren't.
And no way. I mean, I don't even know how much these books were worth when you had Mint Condition, when Richie had Mint Condition. But I certainly wasn't reading a shelf. I certainly wasn't reading those books off of the shelf. So
in my grade, these can be a little pricey. Yes.
So this is like, in the age of Hoopla, which, thank God. I mean, aside from like Hoopla being a great resource, Hoopla's like allows you to read like this, classic literature, I guess, at this time.
Pop literature, sure. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I never read these issues. I really didn't know what they were about. I knew the Death of Gwen Stacy. We're 39 issues into the Amazing Spider-Man, so I'm guessing the Green Goblin is his main villain at this point, his main arch nemesis. And I found it really interesting. This is like the whole, again, like we said, there were parts taken from the Death of Gwen Stacy. There are huge parts that were taken from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie from this comic book. Like the whole, I guess the whole comic book is condensed and put into the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man first movie and parts of it. But yeah, it's crazy. I've never seen, I don't know. I feel like when I was reading Spider-Man and JMS run, Norman Osborn was already dead and they didn't do a lot with the Green Goblin. So I haven't had a lot of exposure to Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin being alive and being the main villain. And I'm fascinated by his character portrayal. I'm fascinated by the whole trope of these comic books, is him telling the whole backstory of how he became the Green Goblin.
Green Goblin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting tale there. That is. Yes, it is.
Which, like Dr. Strom, I guess he appeared in like issue 37, thanks to Stanley. He gave a little footnote there. But
these books are rife with footnotes because they all just leap, they all follow the other. They're all derivative of each other. That's in a good way, not a bad way, derivative.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I think it's great. I love the whole, the classic cover that I've drawn for you, where he's grabbing him off the street and he's like half in Spider-Man clothes and half out of it.
And folks, here's the gift that James gave me, the classic cover that James redid for this cover here.
Yeah, you said it. I think you said it many times in this podcast. That's one of like the most classic covers you think in comic book history.
It's my favorite cover of all time. Of all the comic books I've ever read and all the covers I've ever seen, this is my favorite comic book cover for various reasons. But it's my favorite comic book cover of all time. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll probably go through more of the beats and story. I love the machinations of the Green Goblin. He hired these goons. He came up with a. Just jumping into these things, like I guess he knew that Spider-Man has spider sense and figured out like a formula to deaden the spider sense, and then he can track him and kidnap him, and that's like the first issue. And in the meantime, Peter Parker's like, I guess something happened to Aunt May where she's fragile and she can't be like.
Well, at this point, she probably had a third or fourth heart attack at this point, so he has to be careful because he goes to the doctor because he's got a cold, right?
Oh, that's right. He goes to the
He
doctor.
got a
Yes.
head cold. But the doctor says, look, I got some news about your aunt. She cannot be in any way, shape, or form agitated or become anxious, because if she does, she could just, check out. So if you're a Spider-Man and you're Peter Parker and you're thinking, oh my God, if Aunt May ever finds out I'm Spider-Man, this is gonna poor woman's gonna just check out. So and of course Lee builds on that to the point of the whole confrontation.
Yeah, it's and then at the same time you have what he's like Harry's woes about his dad and people and then people are like, oh, Parker's looking after Harry and like I thought he was like a real nerd or didn't like care. Like there's all these things, all this high school drama going on. Or
Well, it's college at this point.
oh,
They're
college
they're
drama,
they're,
college drama.
they're in their first or second year at. Well, I should know this. It wasn't NYU. It might have been. It was a some type of playoff at NYU, but you notice in the first issue, uh, Peter's being standoffish. They think because he's thinking about his problems with Aunt May and his cold and da da da, and they think he's being standoffish. And then well, maybe he's not such. And then they see him like talking to Harry in class, and even Flash thinks, well, maybe Peter's more of a man than I give him credit for. So the high school stuff is getting left behind. This is at the point now where Flash and Liz Allen and the rest of the gang are starting to give Peter a little more leeway, a little more slack, as not being a total bookworm and a total standoffish nerd. But things happen that always regresses that somehow.
Well, that's pretty impressive. Like they're issue 39 and he's already out of high school. So I guess they were doing pretty fast chronology
They
here.
were. He's 15 when he starts. It's 1962. This is 1966. So, yeah, this is his first year of college. Apparently, the first 4 years of Spider-Man were happening in real time. Then, of
Wow.
course, somebody must have said to Stan, or Stan thought, I got to slow this down because he'll be an old man by the time I get to tell the stories I want to tell.
Well, I guess reading this stuff, I mean, Spider-Man has been around. Like, how old is Spider-Man now as a character?
In our time,
Yeah, in our time.
I would say he's like 30, 31, 32.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, how long has Spider-Man been around as a character?
Oh, since 1962.
Okay, so he's
62 years.
62 years. So
As a character, yeah.
it seems like a chunk of what we know in the movies and stuff, and they highlight is from this run. Is from this stuff.
The first 38 issues of Lee and Ditko plus 2 annuals, and Flash Fact. Issue 39 is the first issue that John Romita penciled because
Yes, I remember from when we
Steve left
memorialized
in a
John
huff.
Maria. Yeah.
Steve and Stan, their relationship dissolved in not a very amicable way. And Romita comes in, and if you notice this, if you're familiar with the Ditko stuff before, Romita is trying to do Ditko here. Spider-Man is, and then after about 5 or 6 issues, he realizes I got to do my own stuff, and that's when the book takes off. And while it was a good seller originally, it becomes the mega seller, and it becomes the flagship book under Lee and John Romita Sr.
Wow.
At that point, yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'll have to continue reading some more of the Masterworks stuff after this point because it's just really fascinating. 62 years of Spider-Man and most of what we consume in terms of the TV and movies is
Right
more
here.
this stuff than it is anything that's come even later, anything later past like the Lee and Ditko and Romita stuff. It's mostly this stuff that they draw from for the stories in the movies and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down this is like a tour de force for Stan Lee. It's over the top. It's melodramatic writing that showcases all the strengths and weaknesses of Peter Parker. And these 2 issues have everything. They have action, mystery, suspense, soap opera, pathos, and they all mix together. And this is, like you said, this is the foundation of Peter Parker. This is who he is, the lovable loser, which you're still doing now, 62 years later. And doesn't work for a 32-year-old. They got to move away from that.
He's got to hold down a job.
But yeah, this is it. The way the first 100 issues or the first 50 issues of Fantastic Four laid the groundwork for that. The first 50 issues or so, because issue 50 of ASM introduces the Kingpin. So if you go from issue 1 to 50, that is the foundation of this character. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 10 issues from now, we meet the Kingpin.
You meet the Kingpin, exactly. Yeah.
That's quite a year.
Yeah. Right. Isn't it? There's something I want to say about I mentioned Stan started doing college tour shortly after this, and they asked him where he gets his ideas from, who he's selling these books to, what's his target audience, and he kind of admitted that he was going for an older audience, a college audience possibly, because he's on college campuses. But he said that what he was doing at Marvel was a satire on the modern comic book. He was basically satirizing DC Comics. And I think when you read these stories and you look back now with a quote unquote modern perspective, I don't even know if that's good or bad, I'll just say it's a modern perspective, you can see things here that they would never do in comic books today, like the overwritten dialogue and the captions and things like that, and the relationships. They're not. I'm not saying they're surface level, but they're you use the word tropes before, and they're all in here. So he can't get the girl, he can't keep a job, he's worrying about his aunt. But Stan was writing. I don't know if Stan was. He was taking his job seriously to put out books that would sell, but he was also having fun with this. And I think he was, while he was writing these stories, he had a little, little grin and laughing at the people who might have been reading them at the time.
Well, it is. I was going to say it does read like a comedy. Like he's going to the doctor for a head cold. His doctor decides to bring up like your aunt can't handle any type of pressure, and he's like, oh my god! And then the worst thing in the world happens: his arch enemy like kidnaps him, and
well, there's a fight right outside Aunt May's window.
Yeah,
before
right
that.
Aunt May's window, and he knows who he is, but then he reveals like it's very again another trope, like the villain reveals for whatever reason reveals himself to his arch nemesis, and it's the friend. Well, I guess is Harry like his best friend at this point, or just
no friend? Harry was kind of like Flash in high. Well, no, I didn't meet Harry until college. Harry takes over the Flash Thompson role in college. Flash is warming up to Peter by this point a little bit, but Harry didn't like Peter at all. Didn't like her at all, and she's not in this issue. I don't know if she's introduced yet, but Harry's main squeeze, as they would say back in the day, was Mary Jane.
Okay.
And we've met Gwen already, but she's not in this issue. That's interesting, these two issues. But they didn't hit it off at first, Harry and Peter. But, you see by the end of issue 40, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but Peter is thinking about, after he beats the Goblin, Norman Osborn, he's thinking about Harry. He wants to basically put this family back together because he knows what Harry's gone through. He even says, I was an orphan, and Harry didn't know that. When Harry finds out about that, they have a connection because Harry's kind of an orphan too because his father's not paying any attention to him.
Yeah, Harry comes off a very sympathetic sort of character, so. Especially, obviously in issue 40, more so when you hear the backstory of Norman Osborn. Because he's a widower, Norman Osborn. And then,
I don't know if we've ever gotten the full story. I think we have. I just don't remember what happened to Harry's mom. But she had passed away when he was younger.
And then Norman Osborn throws himself into making money because he thinks money will make them both happy.
Right. Money and power.
Money and power.
Money brings you. I need to make the money so I can have the power. I'm paraphrasing, but that was his MO, his modus operandi.
And then eventually he becomes the Green Goblin because he tests out a serum that Strom made after he fires Strom, and then it doesn't sound like the serum, I guess, went according to plan because it blew up, right? It was an accident.
Yeah, and I don't, and when he's lying on the operating table, the doctors have found out some way that his brain has been severely damaged. Well, if so, then why is he still alive? Yeah. Right? But obviously his brain has been damaged to the point where he thinks he's stronger and smarter when he starts recuperating. Obviously he's like a total, evil bastard at this point. And it's a little, it's kind of glossed over how that explosion turns him into the Goblin. But I think they did a much better job in the first movie.
Yes.
And obviously William Dafoe sold it so well. But it's all here. It's all, like you said.
Yeah, I couldn't tell here because obviously I'm influenced by all the things that have come out prior to this. So I'm thinking the original movie. But I guess if you look at the original context here, it really could be just Norman Osborn is insane. Like there's nothing that says the formula made him stronger or smarter or changed him other than just he had an accident and afterwards he kind of went crazy. He
went crazy. Well, he was already leaning towards crazy at that point. I think a little bit. He was obsessed with, But at this point now, he's gone from maybe neurotic to being psychotic for sure.
So that's kind of interesting. Like it's amazing, I guess. reading these origins, these first appearance of these characters, or the origin story of them, it's interesting to see what future writers do with the material, and they sort of spin it that
Mhm.
that this was a goblin formula, or was a super soldier formula, or something. It's something like that. The
That's a
goblin.
good point. When you look at the history of Marvel Comics, Super Soldier Formula was in the 40s, the original Simon and Kirby Captain America. But a lot of these heroes are atomic age heroes. Obviously, the Hulk, Daredevil, being struck by the canister of radioactive residue that gives him takes his sight, but gives him his radar sense. And while we're not told this is a radioactive formula, it's an explosion that changes Norman Osborn into a psychotic criminal. The Fantastic Four are changed by cosmic radiation.
Right.
In the 60s, people were like really worried about radiation because of, the whole threat of the Cold War, nuclear war. So radiation was the big bugaboo that scared the hell out of everybody.
And accidents. All these happen.
And accidents, yes.
These are all accidents that happen to befell these people. So, well, kind of going back to issue 39, my question to you, Joe, is did you get this issue in real time, and what did you think?
Yeah, there's a story, yes, and I just remembered this story because I got these the same summer, because I said, how can a 10-year-old kid pass up this cover? Oh my God, I didn't know who this guy was. This is a year before the Spider-Man cartoon premiered, but oh crap, the hero's in terrible shape, danger. His face is exposed, so the villain must know who he is. I had been reading DC Comics for a few months, and this book came out, and the next one, and I purchased them both, and then I stopped for some reason. I didn't read Spider-Man for another year until the animated TV show came out in the fall of '67, and ding, I got to go back to Spider-Man. This is pretty good stuff. So I was probably my devotion to DC Comics at that point, plus limited funds. I mean, 50 cents allowance a week for a 10-year-old. That was it, buddy. So, and all the deposit bottles I could change. So, yeah, I read these two books and put myself on hiatus with Marvel Comics, with Spider-Man, and then just dove back in. So yeah, I did buy this. This is like that Flash cover that we talk about. How can you pass that up if you're a 10-year-old? You just can't. These were designed to get kids, boys and girls, to grab that thing, plunk their money down, and run home, and on their bed and read their comic book and just like escape into a world of fantasy.
So was this like these two, like your first Spider-Man books?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some intro, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess did it, I guess the gravity of these two issues hit you later when you reread them, considering that they were your first two books, and then you gave a year hiatus. So I guess you didn't realize what you were. Did you realize is Spider-Man's being revealed to his greatest enemy, or was just that when you first read it, it was just like, oh, this is a good issue? And
no, it was good. I was, I think it's a long time ago. We're talking 58 years ago. So I was probably grateful that in issue 40 they gave you all that backstory, and they denoted all the four previous appearances of Spider-Man going up against the Green Goblin, including issue 14, which I do have. I wish I had a better copy, but the first Green Goblin. But yes. So I as a newbie, you could come into comic books in those days, pick up the book for the first time, and they were going to make sure they grabbed you by the throat first of all, and thrust you into this story, and they would tell you what was going on previously. They wouldn't leave you in the dark like they do today.
Yeah.
So,
wow. When did you How did you eventually read the entire Amazing Spider-Man run? Was it like through collecting the back issues, or did you eventually read the trades? Or
no, it started collecting it seriously by the fall of '67, after the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man cartoons appeared on TV. It picked up Fantastic Four, and then later on picked up Iron Man and Cap. And by the early '70s, conventions were going on. And I started going to the conventions, and okay, at this point, Spider-Man was, I guess, past '71, was past issue 100. So I got to pick up all the stuff that came before issue 39. Wow. And I wish I had more money, because I could have picked up number one. Because probably in '71, you probably could have got a copy of Amazing Spider-Man for about $50 to $100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, actually, back then that was worth a lot more money, though. $50 to $100. Like, what's inflation for that? That's probably
got to be over $1,000.
$1,000 in today's money.
$1,600, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so that's not cheap for
No,
even
no,
at your
not
point.
for a high school kid. No,
Well, what was, I
at
guess,
that
what
point.
was how far back did you go? Like, what was the, I guess, the
Um, well, my oldest Spider-Man comic book in my collection is number 6, which is the first appearance of the Lizard.
okay?
It's not a very good copy. I remember buying that at a convention in the early '70s. I probably paid about $2 for it, maybe
Okay,
even less
wow,
than that. I
wow.
think I told you this before. When I would go to conventions in the early '70s, I would have limited funds in my pocket, and I would look for books that I wanted to collect, fill in my Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers, X-Men, whatever. And you go through the boxes, and you'd see multiple copies of the same issue. I would always grab the one with the lowest price. So there's one for $1.75. Oh, there's one for 50 cents. Because I wanted to come home with a stack of comic books. I wasn't even at that point. I wasn't thinking about collecting. I was still
Yeah,
a
but you were
reader.
a reader. That's what
Exactly.
they were designed to do. They
Yeah.
were a reader,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
I
So,
mean, I guess in hindsight, because whatever. In
oh,
hindsight, you were like,
well, when I built
collectors.
the time machine,
Yeah, but I
go
mean,
back.
you were a reader, and I mean, your books are still. I mean, I'm sure even how poor your maybe some of these issues are, they're still worth something.
Oh yeah. I mean, books like this book, I got it graded as a fine minus, so that's a five, I guess. This one I got it graded as a fine plus, so maybe it's a 6. There's some color cracks, but otherwise it's really really good. So um, I mean my copy of Brave and the Bold 28, I think it's a 4. I hope it's a 4. And if it's a 4, it's worth about $3,000 if you get it
What's the
great.
which? I'm sorry. What's
I'm sorry.
appearances?
That's the first appearance of the Justice League of America.
Oh no, so I mean,
Yeah,
I
so
should know that. Another issue that I haven't read. Maybe that'll be a future Joe's Comics corner. Is that
there's 3. There's 28, 29, and 30. And then a few months later, Justice League number 1 hits the stands.
yeah, all issues I've not read. So maybe those will be future future podcast audience because
Yeah.
we'll keep doing these until I catch up. So well, no, that's fascinating. I mean, so you had from issue six on for the Amazing Spider-Man.
There's a few gaps in there. I don't have. I have the first. Well, the first Doc Ock is number 5, so I missed that by 1. And then he comes back again. I think it's 11 and 12, and I think I have 11 and not 12. Uh, but there's a few here and there. I had number 8, and somehow it got lost in a move. But my run starts at 14, which is the first Green Goblin, and that
Wow,
goes uninterrupted until the end of Volume 1.
wow, that's
Yeah,
very impressive. Yeah, it's a very impressive collection.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I had to go down that little memory lane with you. So,
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, no, it's very fascinating to me. So, the other thing that we just, I don't know why this jog, just talking about this, like with first appearance of characters and stuff, and with Spider-Man, like, with the Tom Holland one, was like, this is the first time I've ever come across Ned Leeds in a comic book.
Yes, Ned was a reporter at the I was going to say the Daily Planet, at the Daily Bugle, and there's an issue coming up. As you know, I'm reading Marvel as I go through the ages. I'm up to, I think, July 76, and the most recent ASM, that was the issue where Ned and Betty Brant tie the knot. And of
Okay.
course, there's a wedding crash, a villain called Mirage, and Peter's got to do his stuff and still not give away his secret identity.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like when Ned Leeds was like in Spider-Man, the more recent Spider-Man was like, who is this character? Did they invent a character? Did they invent a friend?
Yeah, that Ned Leeds is another. Listen, that Ned Leeds is a short, overweight guy, and this Ned Leeds is a tall, blonde guy, leading man type, right? Yeah, because that's what they were doing
Well,
back
I
then.
had no idea. Like it's like real character in
Oh
Spider-Man.
yeah, he's been around. I don't know Ned's first appearance, but it was before issue 39. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, this was like fascinating. It was like, wow, Ned Leeds is like a real, like I'm like, wow, Ned Leeds. I
I
never
could
read
be
anything
wrong
about him.
about this, Arco and Steve Perel, if you're out there and you're listening, but I think Ned Leeds might have been one of, I could be wrong again, one of the Hobgoblin's identities at some point.
That sounds vaguely familiar to me, but I know
Mhm.
less. I know less about the Hobgoblin than I
I don't
do.
think, Hobgoblin is right up there with Hawkman as far as trying to figure out that continuity. I mean, that's just gone off the
Because wasn't
rails.
Robbie Robinson's son a Hobgoblin or something?
He was the Prowler.
Oh, he's a Prowler. Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. This is why when we go down this road, we need Arco.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, but there were 3 Hobgoblins though, right?
At least,
At
maybe
least.
4. I'm not sure, but there was a bushel of hobgoblins.
Spider-Man can't go anywhere without stepping on a goblin.
No, I guess we get dead cow hitting a goblin.
And they all come from this goblin, which is
Yeah.
this is the main goblin.
You watched the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon back in '94, right?
Yeah,
If you remember the continuity, they introduced the Hobgoblin before
I
they
remember
introduced the
that.
Green Goblin.
Yeah,
That
I
blew my
always
mind
I
watching that.
know that was crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good animated show. That
Oh,
was
it's excellent.
they went deep on that. I think that's a lot of the stuff that influences Spider-Man today too. Is that '94 cartoon show?
I think definitely, yeah,
You know,
definitely.
they've talked about doing Spider-Man '97 for that also, like they did X-Men. So
Oh, I would love that.
yeah,
I would love to see that. Yeah.
they've been tossing that around. So I guess we'll see if Disney Plus like ends up doing that. But so I guess we got off these are always good for good tangents and stuff.
Yeah, because
But
yeah.
so in issue 40, like I said, it's the whole backstory of how he became the Green Goblin, and
It's a splash page.
yeah, that's great
Great splash page. Stan Lee writer John Romita Sr., not at the time just John Romita, and Mickey DeMeo, who was actually Mike Esposito, the other half of Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito.
Okay.
He inked under numerous pen names. Mike Esposito.
So I like the wrap up of this, which we didn't. Well, I guess did we get this a little bit? We did get this a little bit in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. He what hits his head basically and gets amnesia, and that's how he forgets who Peter Parker is and who and that's the wrap up of the like, at least for this issue, that's the wrap up of how Peter gets out of like Norman Osborn completely destroying his life.
Well, as the battle continues in the second half of 40, he's saying, even if I win, I lose, because if I can defeat him, he's still going to blab my secret identity to the world. Aunt May's going to find out, and she's going to die from that. So, as I read this, I haven't read this in a while. Actually, I did read it last year, but 2 years ago, whenever we did the list. But reading it this morning, in the end, you see Peter's humanity. I mean, he defeats the guy. The building is burning. The cops and the fire department are trying to get in, and he said, "I don't know how in a conflagration like that a suit survived, but there was one suit left and he uses his spider speed to put the suit on Norman, so that at that point he knows that Norman has lost his memory, doesn't know that he's Spider-Man, and the Peter Spider-Man, and he's trying to save a family. He's thinking of Harry. He's thinking, well, May's not going to find out about what happened about me, but Harry could learn that his father's a criminal. I can't have that, because he's not a criminal anymore. He wasn't responsible for his actions because of his accident. I thought it was a very Superman type moment at the end, because this is something that Clark would do, and this is why I think Clark and Peter are so separated at birth, Superman and Spider-Man, because they think they'll take down the villain, and of course Spidey will do it in a little more pugilistic way than Superman would, obviously, but they're always thinking about the future after they take down the villain, how maybe this guy or this girl could be redeemed, and what about their family, how's it going to affect them. And Peter's thinking about all those things at the end.
Yeah, he puts a suit on him. He also tells the firefighters he helped defeat the Green Goblin. He's a hero.
So he's a hero. He makes him a hero too.
Yeah, and well, I guess they took out the amnesia part in the Raimi film, and they made it that after he killed the Green Goblin, he took him out of the suit and put him into bed. After he had,
he brought him back to the penthouse, right?
He brought him back to the penthouse and got rid of the Goblin suit and the glider and everything, and just put him there.
Reading these two this morning, I have to now go back and rewatch the Raimi Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, because I love those movies.
Yeah. I mean, Sam Raimi took a lot from these issues here. I mean, clearly this was like the inspiration for those those first two movies, especially the first one with the Goblin stuff and everything. But I mean, it was just, it's so flash forward, like how long does Norman Osborn stay like this?
Well, I should have prepared for that. I didn't. Yes, he does come back as the Green Goblin. I don't know exactly when. So, Stephen Arco, please, in the comments.
Well, I mean, obviously he gets his memory back at some point.
And of course, at the end of issue 121 and 122, Gwen dies in 121.
Right.
And then he gets impaled by his goblin glider, which he calls his broomstick in this.
Yes, it was.
His flying broomstick.
You broke my broomstick.
To the goblin glider,
Yeah.
but book. Peter's a scientist, so that's why. Yeah. So
I
that's
like
it.
he has like animatronic bats that he throws at Spider-Man.
But yeah, but you know what's interesting? He was so intent before and after the explosion on making money and getting power. He has a device that you can hook up to somebody's head that makes their thoughts project onto a TV screen. This is 1966. You know what kind of money he could have made with that? Holy crap! He could have been a billionaire overnight. I wonder if
He
Stan
saved,
even thought about that.
they're saving all the good stuff for
Yeah,
themselves.
I mean, he basically created this thing. Oh, amazing.
I
So,
also like, we just kind of go along with the gimmick. Like he doesn't really explain why he chose the guise of a goblin or that look or that
yeah,
whole
I was
motif.
waiting for that when I read it. He did say, I'm going to make it my favorite color, green, because that was the color of the formula, right? It turned green, it
Right.
started
Yeah.
bubbling, boom.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah,
why a goblin, I
by a
guess.
goblin, yeah. I think if Stan was alive today, and he's probably said this before, why are all the names alliterative? Peter Parker, Reed Richards, Robbie Ryder, the Green Goblin, uh, because Stan had trouble remembering. Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
So if he made them alliterative, he could remember them. In early issues of the Hulk, sometimes he's Bruce Banner, sometimes he's Bob Banner, because
Oh.
he's Robert Banner, Robert Bruce Banner. That's his full name. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
probably why. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess he just liked the color green Stan did. You remember, it's a time when primary colors was four colors, right? That's what they had. Was four colors to work with. They had to be colorful, so you'd snatch it off you'd snatch this off the newsstand. They're very colorful, right? Catches
Yeah.
your eye. This is sitting next to a copy of Little Baby Huey. I'm buying this. I'm not buying Baby Huey.
Oh yeah, I mean it's very like Ramita knocked it out of the park with
Yeah,
like his first outing. I mean
yeah.
it's just I'll have to like go. I mean obviously we did it when we did the memorial episode for him, but I'll have to, like you said. When does his style kicks in? What, 5 issues you said from this?
Yeah, I think he said. I think I saw there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos with the great masters that were done around 20 years ago. I wish I could remember the name of the interviewer and the title of the show, but Ramita was on and he said, "Yeah, I was trying to do Ditko and I realized I can't do that. His background was in romance comics basically and westerns, and he said, I've got to be me. I got to do it my way," and he did, and that's when the book really took off. It
Yeah,
became,
I'll have to like look at the next Masterworks and go a few issues in and see what the
well,
change in style.
let's see. Let me just see. I've got okay. Oh wait, we mentioned this book.
Yeah, another book I've not read.
And you talk about Sam Raimi lifting things from the books, right?
Well, that was in Spider-Man 2. That was right, the Spider-Man No More.
There it is.
Yeah,
He took the page and he just transferred it to the film.
yeah.
So, the suit and garbage pail.
For a listening audience, which issue of Spider-Man is that, Joe?
This is issue 50, and this is Peter giving up his Spider-Man identity and throwing his suit in a garbage pail and walking away, shoulders hunched.
That's the classic Spider-Man No More, right?
Spider-Man No More, yeah.
Yeah.
So by that point, this was John Romita's character, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest comic book artists of all time. John
Yeah, but I
Romita.
mean, like he's impersonating Ditko here, but I think it's a very solid.
It works.
The action's good. The character designs are good. Everyone looks like they should look.
Yep. See this panel right here?
Mm-hmm.
On the top of, well, it's page 37 because it's in the book, but that's a very Ditko-esque pose. So they're there, but you can see, his style coming through, especially with the women, because again, his background was in romance.
Was romance, yeah. Oh yeah, that I don't know what page this is, but if you go a few pages back, there's the woman who's like looking longingly off to the side in the upper left.
Oh, is that Betty in the
I have it on my phone, folks. So here, this panel.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that could be the cover of a romance comic book, and it probably was one of his covers that he repurposed. I'm not saying no shade at the man, but yes, that's it's a romance comic book panel, definitely.
And I love. I mean, this is like classic Jonah Jameson, and also like J.K. Simmons. He's like, "Oh, you terrible photos. I'm not giving you anything for him." He's like, "Okay, I'll take him somewhere. I'll give you whatever this, and you should be happy I gave you that."
Yeah, I don't want you to be embarrassed when they turn you down at the Globe, so I'll buy them. And he's making all these. Peter's taking all these skinflint, cheapskate. That's great. The relationship between Peter and J. Jonah Jameson is it's one of the best relationships, but two characters in the history of comic books. It really is.
They like Jay Jonah likes him. I mean, he has to like him at some level, right? I mean, after
I think he does. He started growing on him later on. Yes, he did. But
yeah.
yeah, in the main continuity, I don't know, in recent years, maybe 10 years ago, he finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. And they become friends, but he's trying to get Peter to do things that he wants Peter to do as Spider-Man. And so he becomes a nudge. He's still a nudge to Peter. He's still a pain in the posterior.
Well, Jay, what is that? That's recently, because he was mayor also, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
he was mayor of New York City.
Right,
Might have been around that time that he found out Peter was Spider-Man.
Yeah. Look at this. I love this panel too. This that
that's
goblin.
great. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Now is that more, I guess, Ditko? That's not Ramita's goblin, would you say, or is that like more of Ramita
the face looks more like a Ditko, but the poses could be Ditko or Ramita.
Sorry, audience. I know for the listening audience, you're like listening to us talk about a panel, but it's if you're looking at Spider-Man 40, there's this amazing, I mean, it's not even a half page. It's like a large square of the full body of Green Goblin. I mean, he did like a 5-panel spread in that page. So
there's a page, the next to the last page of issue 40. I'll hold it up. As you can see, it's nine panels, right, James?
Yeah, 9-panel grid.
That was the way Steve Ditko was telling his stories. Ramita, as he progresses to his style, you'll see more pages where there's bigger panels. Here's one. Here he is fighting the Rhino, issue 41, the first appearance of the Rhino. And you can see it's only 4 panels. Ditko didn't do that until the very end of his run. So, different styles. Not only different styles in the rendition of the characters, but different storytelling styles.
Well, I think when you first start storytelling in comics, for what I understand, like listening to there's a lot of great YouTube videos with the artists from today, and obviously interviews from previous. You start with the 9-panel grid until you kind of evolve out of it, and then you have to be clever to kind of break the 9-panel grid, or to do break the grid or the panels. So yeah, I mean, it's a good place to start, and then you kind of branch out off from there.
You've read the early Doctor Strange, right?
Yes, yeah, I read the.
They're all 9-panel grids, right?
Yeah, all panels.
You only had 6 pages to work with at the beginning, so you had a lot of panels.
Well, that was one of our first Comics Corner. We did
that's right,
Doctor Strange, the 6-page story.
Issue 110 of Strange Tales.
Yes,
the origin of Doctor Strange. Yeah,
told the whole story in 6
pages, and that would take 6 issues at least now, 6 months.
To be ultra decompressed.
Yeah.
I like at the end of issue 40, after all of this, Aunt May has Peter in bed feeding him soup.
You're flushed. In fact, you're flushed. I do declare you have a fever. She's feeding him soup.
And then you have Harry taking care of his dad.
Yeah, and that was the point of that ending. Yeah. No, I mean, it's again, it's not subtle in any way, but Stan was getting a point across here about family, and basically, you got to take care of your own. And and there's forgiveness here. Aunt May forgives Peter for not calling, and Harry forgives his father, and he's taking care of him. So I think that's actually the main. Just hit me, but I think that might be the theme of the story: is forgiveness, which is very important to these heroes because that's part of who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
for their character.
Forgiveness is
I was going to say, there's I want to talk about Stan Lee a bit because, as you know, recently in some books and some articles and essays, Stan is taking on the chin as being the auteur of the Marvel Universe. Supposedly, it was really Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, FF and Spider-Man, and Stan was just a pitch man. Now that might be true, and Stan might have only given Jack a 2-page, breakdown of any issue of Spidey or to Steve. Fantastic Four and Spidey, and they did the art, and Stan would come back and dialogue it. But I still think, he had the ideas, he had the germ of the idea for the character, for the story, and so I'm always going to be a staunch defender of Stan Lee. But I think these 2 issues, the way they're overwritten, as I said before, He's working with John Romita Jr. on Spider-Man for the first time. He probably worked with him previously in westerns and romance books. But I think Stan wanted to tell his story here. And you'll notice some panels in issue, especially in 39, where the word balloons almost obscure all the art. There's a lot of words on the page.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if John didn't give Stan what he wanted because they were working together for the first time, and Stan had to write in what he wanted to make up for what he thought wasn't in the panel. But this happens more than once. But I noticed that it was very much in play in these two issues. But again, Stan, when he had to, he could write a tale and draw you in and make you feel something.
Yeah, I think there's a good amount of like show and tell in these books. I mean, there's definitely a lot of tell. I did notice like it was a lot. It was like reading an Alan Moore or a Kevin Smith comic book. There's a lot of words.
Yeah, Alan Moore, yeah, or Kevin Smith, exactly.
There's a lot of words, but I don't think it's. I don't know. I feel like the artwork is going along with the dialogue.
Yeah.
I get the intensity from Norman Osborn. I get the intensity from Peter. I mean, I get all the emotions. So I don't know if Stan is overwriting it or he's just like maybe this is how he wanted to tell the story.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly it. And he probably knew he's at this point he's not the publisher yet or even the editor. He's moving in that direction, but. They knew their audience was not going to sit around for a protracted, story, a serialized story. So he had to get this done in two issues because he probably knew he was introducing a new villain in issue 41. So, hey, he went at it. He just had
so is multi-part storytelling like not what they did back? So this is this 2-issue story thing like
Yeah, this is rare because in issue 40 when Norman is reliving his past. And you see the 4 times he's gone up against Spider-Man, and they denote the issues, the number of the issues in the editorial comments at the bottom. There were through lines. Stan did introduce that into comic books, especially in the Marvel age. But there were through lines and subplots. But almost every issue stood on its own. Where it really starts, you really start getting the multiple issues is in Fantastic Four. That happens first there than before it does in Spider-Man.
Interesting. Well, it's just like TV, I guess. Like TV took a long time to do arc-based storytelling, or to, I mean, they always say like in serialized TV, but like it's if you're following continuity, there sort of isn't always going to be an arc a little bit if you're honoring continuity. I mean, it's very rare to, even Star Trek and even the original Star Trek honored some continuity, even though it wasn't like a strict like.
Yeah, they would mention the Organian Peace Treaty a number of times, the neutral zone.
Right. They would also mention things that happened in previous episodes in future episodes. It wasn't like not. It was rare, but they. So I mean, Marvel always seemed like early Marvel, and then obviously got more like it always honored its continuity. It didn't.
Without a doubt.
And
maybe you had basically one man driving that continuity, and that was Stan.
Yeah, and maybe he wasn't always driving to like. Obviously, this is way before. Like this is before the multi-universe crossover. Like we spoke. Like this wasn't until the '80s with Jim Shooter doing Secret Wars that we got a crossover of that magnitude. So, but there was always continuity in the Marvel universe of, this character met this character at this point, and we did this at this time, and
it's when Spider-Man meets Daredevil for the first time in Amazing Spider-Man 16. Then a month or two later, or maybe a year later, they cross paths in Daredevil issue in the teens, and they refer back to when they first met in that previous Spider-Man issue. So yes,
I think continuity. And we spoke about this with Jeremy Adams. Like it's sad when the companies get so convoluted they can't remember their own continuity anymore.
It's just DC Comics right now. Yes.
Yeah.
Say what you want about Marvel's quote unquote quality today, which I don't think is as good as DC, but at least they don't randomly just, let's reboot everything, and they don't just throw stuff to the wind. DC's been doing that now for a good, 15 years, or we'll go back. Well, yeah, when was the 2011 was the New 52, right? So it's 13 years ago.
Well, then we had the dawn of DC,
and Rebirth before that, and some of the, the Infinite Frontier. So yeah, DC treats their continuity with reckless abandon. Marvel doesn't, and I
Yeah.
appreciate
Well, I
that
was gonna say,
about
so
Marvel.
has Marvel? I mean, obviously, I've been collecting. No, I mean, I've been in comics and keeping track of it for a while, but like Marvel has never rebooted their universe officially, right? Like it's still. I mean, we've had the ultimate. All the other universes that we read are offshoots of the main 616. Like 616 has not been like
No,
rebooted.
no. There's a Doctor Strange story I just read the other day. I wish I could remember the number of the issue. It might have been issue 14 or 15. It's the culmination of Doctor Strange's battle with eternity, and the entire planet gets destroyed, and then it gets reimagined. And Strange is the only one in the world who knows that everybody died and came back, but they had no idea that they died. That was in continuity within Doctor Strange for a while, but then even after a while, Marvel must have said, "Wait a minute, this is ridiculous," because I don't think it was ever mentioned in another book unless Strange mentions it to somebody else, and he probably wouldn't. So at some point down the road, that story was like erased. It didn't
Hmm.
happen, or if it happened, everybody, even Strange, forgot at that point. So there were things like that. Once in a while, they would do crazy things like that, but otherwise, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and start over again. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's like I said, it's convoluted and a lot of strange stuff happens, but Marvel continuity in Marvel is they they keep it going.
These two issues. I mean, again, it's hard to remember exactly because I said it's 58 years ago, but you know, when you're a 10-year-old kid and you're reading this stuff, it's like, oh my god, this is amazing. The colors are bright, the action is incredible. You kind of get through the soap opera part. Oh, come on, get to the action. And Stan would always say, "Hang in there, Pilgrim. The soap opera will be ending, and we'll be hurtling into the action very shortly." Things like that, and you just, oh, I can't wait. And you got your money's worth. And 12 cents was a lot of money to a 10-year-old kid. It wasn't hard to come by. It wasn't easy to come by, I should say. So I just these things take me back to a more innocent time, a child time period. 10. So yeah, I love
Yeah,
these books.
no, it was a great show. I'm glad we glad you indulged me and we did
Yeah,
these two issues because it was good to read them and have that piece of comic book history now under my belt.
I hope you continue. This is classic Silver Age Marvel comic books. This is 1966. This is when Marvel um, was starting to be recognized as a force in the industry. The sales were going up on almost all their books, and I think the people over at National DC Comics were starting to take notice of them, and you know, they called DC to distinguish competition of Brand X, and they made fun of him, numerous times. But yeah, this is about 66 is about the year that this company, this little company that did, and they
Wow.
took off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will we will I will be reading more when I can, and obviously we have many other masterwork copies and things for us to dive into that I have not read. Like I said, you listed two of them. I did not read Spider-Man No More. I have not read Spider-Man Me and the Kingpin. I have not read any of those books, so those are all things waiting for me.
Yeah, you got to read the stuff that leads up to issue 50 because
Yeah.
it does lead up to 50.
I haven't read
Uh,
the issue where Spider-Man is trying to get the big machine off his back and he's underwater.
oh, that's a three-parter, and that's the third part. That's what that's probably the first multiple parter. That was issue 33, so it's 31, 32, 33. The villain is Doc Ock. I can't remember the name of the story, but the first 4 pages are considered some of the best illustrated pages in comic book history. And it was Steve Ditko at the height of his powers. An incredible issue 33, Amazing Spider-Man issue 33. That's the book.
Well, I got to go back and read that. So we have many journeys, Joe, for us to take in the comic book history for me to like get caught up on.
Yeah, they put this poor guy through the ringer. When he finds out that he sees him unmasked, he says he's just a kid, no more than 19 or 20. But I think at this point Peter was about 18 because I think this was his first year in. Why can't I think of the name of his college? Not NYU. It's there's a U at the end of it. So, but it's something university. Um, yeah, so I think Peter's about 18. They're all about 18 at this point, and then that's when they slow things down aging wise. Yeah,
Yeah.
but, but
Uh,
otherwise,
Empire State University.
there you go. Thank you, Empire ESU. That's how I knew
Yes.
it. ESU. It's supposed to be NYU. When you see drawings of it, it's definitely they're walking through Washington Square Park. There's the arch. You'll see that in future issues or previous issues. So yeah, I mean, this book was grounded in New York City. There were landmarks.
Yeah.
And if you really want to see landmarks in Spider-Man, you got to get to the run of Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito, because Ross Andrew was a stickler for landmarks and putting them in to make his city real, to ground the book in reality. He would go out before an assignment and he'd just sit there and sketch the Museum of Modern Art, and then it would be in the splash page in Spider-Man versus Superman. There'd be this huge splash page of Spider-Man hanging on a street lamp above the Museum of Modern Art.
Wow.
And it looks like a photo, but it's not. It's hand drawn.
Wow.
So that's really, Ross Andrew was the guy for that.
Wow. Well, that's how you ground a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you have the absurd. These people running around in long, colorful underwear, fighting these insane villains, and doing these incredible things. But if it's in a real setting, it makes it more believable. You suspend your disbelief even more.
Well, the more
verisimilitude.
Yes.
Verisimilitude.
The more outrageous the premise, the more grounded the reality, I guess, or whatever. Yeah, that's what you got. You got to do. That's how you suck the audience in.
Yeah, within the framework of the story, you have to make people believe that it's really happening.
Yeah. So.
There you go.
All right, Joe. Well, any final thoughts? I guess do we have?
No, I mean, for anybody out there who hasn't read these two, you found them on Hoopla, right, James?
They're on Hoopla. They're in the Masterworks collection.
Well, the Epic edition. This is Volume 3 that I have in my hand.
Epic, and then Epic collection for Joe's reading there, and I read mine in the Masterworks collection, Volume 4, which covers issues 31 through 40.
The cover is a remastered cover of Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 3. Spidey wants to join the Avengers, but they say, "What? You know what? If you want to join, you got to prove yourself. Go out and bring in the Hulk." What disrespect! I mean, they were sending him to his death, basically.
Well, he eventually gets to the Avengers. It doesn't happen until
another 40 years after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Spidey got no respect, but that's why we love him.
Yeah.
He's everyman.
He is the everyman. Yeah, he's the Rodney Dangerfield of the superhero community.
Yep, exactly.
Well, thank you, Joe, for doing this with
welcome,
me.
I love doing these things.
Always love Joe's Comics Corner, and always love to learn history from you. And listening audience, hopefully you've enjoyed it. And Steve and Arco, maybe you'll do some corrections on anything that we've missed, or thoughts thoughts that you have, or highlights from these issues that you want to contribute. We'd like to hear from you. And listening audience in general, if you obviously, we just told you where you can find these. You can find these on Hoopla. If you have the money, obviously buying the Epic collection from your local LSC is always, I'm sure they benefit from it. They appreciate it, and keeps those comic book shops alive.
Definitely.
And then if you want to buy it, the actual issues, and you have that kind of money, obviously
more power to you.
So,
I used to say in the 60s.
But we, as when this episode is posted and you're listening to it, you can go to our Facebook page and you can write your comments, your thoughts. If you're listening to us on Spotify, there's a place to put comments there. If this happens to make its way to YouTube, there's a place for comments there. So we'd love to hear from you. I, of course, cannot do this without my excellent comic expert, Joe. So thank you so much.
Thank you, James. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I love comic books, and I love these Silver Age Marvel comic books. I can talk about them all day long. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. And then, so listening audience, we will talk to you on the next episode. Thank you for listening.